But that's interesting because it's one of the things I say to people because with the debate over using punishment, and I couldn't believe until when I came to the States a couple of years ago and stayed with you with the boys, just how common shock collars are still in the States.
Okay.
I mean, they're still around in the UK. They've been banned under the animal welfare legislation in Scotland. So by default, they're not explicitly banned, but the government have said that under animal welfare legislation, we think that you shouldn't be using shock collars. Um, and yeah, so that's the first thing that really struck me is I couldn't believe that just how common because I was chatting to people and they say still probably the majority of dogs are trained with very aversive methods in the States. But one of the things that I talk to people about is, and I'm sure this probably came from one of your lectures, is that, but also when I started to learn a bit about real behavior as well, because I had no formal training, I'm all self-taught.
Hmm.
Um, but the when you learn with rewards, biologically, your brain is once you know what you have to do to get that reward, the brain says, "What's the minimum I have to do to get that reward?" It's going to play brinkmanship from an evolutionary point of view, whereas you don't get that with the punishment based because it doesn't pay you to think if I run a little bit slower, am I not going to get caught by the tiger? And that's one of the attractions, I think, for those that focus on punishment. But the problem is they're then left with a rigid response, whereas the brinkmanship means through differential reinforcement, you can get a better and better response.
Oh yeah.
That's the skill of really good trainers is you start to move to that variable ratio and boom, you can get better and better in that level. But yeah, always for people to be aware of that brinkmanship. You're going to get caught out. The dog's going to see, yeah, can I get something for nothing? And that's it's not being mean or anything like that. That's just natural biology. We all see what's the minimum we have to do
Yeah.
when the rewards are predictable.
I Yeah, I guess I look at it slightly a different way. Firstly, reward training, when done correctly, is just pure in its simplicity and effectiveness. It's
Mm.
unbelievable. However, it's not being used properly now by so many people because they don't phase out the food lures, they don't phase out the food rewards. So then they are now bribing, the dog blows off the bribe. So now they try to drive behavior by changing the antecedent, the bribe. And of course, we know all behavior is driven by consequences.
Mm.
And I just stick to rewards, 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 but have very sophisticated differential reinforcement schedules, which is the only schedule we use from the beginning. We never use a continuous schedule. We go straight in with the differential reinforcement schedule. So we are up to like a response reward ratio of 7 to 1 after just 4 trials. It's
That's
huge. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, we go. It goes like this. I mean, I'll do it for your listeners. Um, how do I go it now? Hi, puppy. I'm Ian. Here's a treat. Come, treat. Okay. Come, sit, treat. Come, sit, down, sit, stand, down, stand. Right. So that is then what was that? 4 treats, 10 behaviors. So it's 2.5 to 1. Then we repeat, come, sit down, sit, stand, down, stand, come, sit down, sit, stand, down, stand, 5 times. Well, now that's 7 behaviors for 1 treat. So right from the beginning, we're on differential reinforcement and which response gets the treat? Well, the quickest or the best. But the thing about that's the first thing. We must get back and use reward training properly, quickly.
It's
But
I
the
think
thing about punishment, I must get this out. I'm sorry.
yeah, no, I'll let you go.
Even if it worked properly, which it doesn't.
Mm.
So, by definition, what you did was not a punishment because a punishment is defined by its consequences on the behavior. So, if you didn't eliminate the problem
You
in
didn't
one
punish.
trial or in one session, then you are not punishing. So, what are you doing? Well, harassing or hurting or frightening. But even if it did work, and if you're a very good trainer, it could work. It's so insufficient because what are we trying to do in training? We have an idea of what we want the dog to do and we want him to do it. that idea is, I don't want you to do that or that or that or that or
Mm.
that or that, which is why punishment training takes forever, because there's so many wrong ways. There's only one right way. So even if we punish, all it does is stops the dog doing what he's doing. It doesn't get the dog doing what we want, which means the only way to accomplish this, and therefore the only feedback when the dog makes a mistake or is non-compliant, is verbal, because it must be instructive. So if the dog's doing anything wrong, I would just say, Rover, sit. End of problem. That's it. About nearly every behavior problem you can think of, licking his rear end, chasing the cat, running out the front door, humping. It's all stopped. Rover, sit. So by being instructive, and that is not, people call it a DRO or a DRI. No, we specifically want one behavior. The dog's barking, shush. The dog's chewing on your slippers, Rover, chew toy. The dog's running around, chasing the cat, Rover, bed. Or Rover, chew toy, bed, down, shush. And so when we give instructive feedback, instructive reprimands, if you like, now we suddenly accelerate training. So this to me is the big thing about punishment. I don't even mention the fact that it's scary or hurtful or it hurts, that it's inhumane. I don't even argue that, because it's a knee-jerk emotional response for people. I just say, even if it worked, it's insufficient.
So,
We want to stop the dog doing what he's doing and get him back on track right away. And we do that with a single word.
so
Dog's
in
about to pee in the living room, outside.
Yeah, in
Sorry.
relation to that, we actually just the other week published a paper. Again, one of our master's students, Lucy China, she did a master's by research, and she took the data that we'd done on we got the money from DEFRA to look at shock collars versus or e-collars versus reward based, and rather than looking at the welfare aspect, she looked at the efficiency of their training, and yeah,
Mm-hmm.
the two just you know they just don't compare. And that was the thing, and we had various controls, and yeah, there were some issues. There always are. People will always trash the research. It's easy to criticize any piece of research if you just want to look for the cherry picking, but it was just so obvious the efficiency differences. And she analyzed all the data blind, and yeah, so yeah, I agree with you entirely about that issue. That yeah, even if you forget about the welfare side, it's just about being efficient.
And effective. And so when you gamify training, and in all my workshops, I just say, right, $100 says you pick a dog for me and what to teach it, I'm going to do it quicker than you can.
Mhm.
So why is reward training quicker than punishment training? And then why is reward training more effective than punishment training? So these are the two things I just proved right now. You pick a dog for yourself, pick a couple for me. I will get there quicker. Why? Because I only have to teach one thing, because there's only one right way.
Mhm.
You have to punish the dog for an infinite number of things, which will take an infinite amount of time. Why is it then more effective? Because in punishment training, the danger is that the dog will learn those single instances when it can escape the punishment, like when you're not there,
Yeah,
dog's at home alone, or you're naked in the shower,
yeah,
or you're on your iPhone. And the dog learns all these things when you're physically, functionally, or mentally absent.
yeah,
And that is a much bigger problem, to get over.
yeah.
Whereas with reward, so with punishment training, you have to punish each and every time immediately. With rewards, you shouldn't.
Mm.
If you reward the dog every time, they learn quickly and then the behavior drops off, because now you've devalued the reward. And they say, well, I know they're calling me. Yeah, I know. In a minute, I'm sniffing this dog's bum. I mean, what's the hurry? I know I'll get the treat when I get there. And so, all these reinforcement schedules are too silly, apart from a high powered differential reinforcement schedule that changes the algorithm with every trial.
Yeah,
Every trial now changes the likelihood of getting a number of different levels of reward.
yeah.
And
I'm
dogs that
I'm really glad you said that, because, as I said, that you've been at the forefront of promoting reinforcement based training, not just in puppies but across the board. But as you said, there's some people who just don't get it. And I've seen dogs, completely screwed up with these continuous reinforcements. The dog is never allowed to make a decision. It's all click and treat and whatever. And then when you put the dog in a situation, and it really struck me actually when I did a workshop with Adam McClosey, and we were trying to do the do as I do, you
Yeah.
demonstrate, and then the dog follows the action. And we got a group of trainers to sort of do the preliminary. And we were in the workshop, we were going to look at the generalization, what went on, and what had you. And there were some very good trainers there. It was interesting how many trainers dropped out. Some people said, well, we're not going to take part in this because you initially start by touching a chair, and then ask the dog to do it, and the dog goes and touches the chair, and then you put a second chair there. Well, and you expect the dog to touch the other chair. You're setting it up to fail. And I was thinking, well, we're getting the dog to try and think, and they didn't want to sort of know it must be rewarded every time. And there was one trainer who was a good trainer who came to the workshop, but they were all click treat, click treat, click treat. And then when we set the dog up with something where the dog actually had to think, you could just see it start to have a meltdown. What am I supposed to do? I'm waiting for the instruction from you. And I just thought, that's really sad because this person loves their dog. They believe in using positive reinforcement, but the dog's got no resilience because they just won't let it be a dog a little bit. And as you said, it's that continuous reinforcement schedule, everything, and everything depends on a food treat. But that brings me to another point, because when I decided to call these podcasts "What Makes You Click," and somebody said after I'd agreed the name, they said, "Oh, that sounds like it's going to be all about clicker training." I said, "No, it's not." And they said, "Oh, well, Ian won't like it anyway either. If it's about, he won't like the fact you're calling it "What Makes You Click." So I will ask you, what are your opinions on clicker training? Just
Well, I always, when I talk about training, I say you have 5 basic reward-based training techniques. I use most of them. Okay, so from the top, definitely the quickest and most effective would be lure reward training. What if you've got an adolescent dog now that's blowing off the food because we didn't phase it out, or he's never had any training? Then I would use all or none reward training. I'm just going to stand and watch this dog until he does something I like, and I'll say, good boy, and give him a treat. I will end up with every single dog in a sit stay looking at me, because that's the most common thing to do. After a few minutes, they get bored, they sit. I say, good boy, treat. Then we have shaping, with or without a clicker. Okay, and when you look at the historical introduction of shaping to dog training, and I was right there, of course, the first ever time clickers were used to train dogs in a training workshop. Kathleen Chin put on the workshop. No one signed up, so I promoted it. We got about 200 people because I was aware about it from the Breland's book, Martha and Keller Breland, and Marion rather, and Kelly Breland. And then, of course, when Keller died, Marion married Bob Bailey, who everyone knows now. And so I knew the value of clicker training, and what it added to dog training at the time was there were very few things you couldn't lure. One of them was retrieve. My luring thing for retrieve was kind of protracted, but you could shape it in one session. You could which I had on my telly program in England, we shaped this German Shepherd to find and retrieve a bunch of car keys. And so this is what it brought to dog training, because what they were still doing to dogs then for retrieve was the forced retrieve, that you show him a dumbbell and you squeeze his paw, or you twist his ear with the metal collar in it, or a trainer in New Jersey used pliers on both ears to squeeze, a pure negative reinforcement. And as soon as you grab that dumbbell, you stop the pain. So it's a very potent training technique, but it just goes wrong so many times. And, so then we have auto shaping. This is the fourth one, which means the dog trains itself. So kind of like you stuff a Kong with food, and before you know it, within one day, the number of barks has been decimated, reduced 90%, and the number of paces or steps has been reduced by 90%. Just by now, instead of feeding a dog in a bowl, feeding him from a chew toy. And then finally, you have physical prompting with rewards. So you've got 5 basic reward training techniques, and I always talk about them, analyze them in terms of ease, which is very important, because if it's not easy, owners can't do it.
Yeah.
Efficiency, how quick is it? Because if it ain't quick, they aren't going to do it. And then effectiveness, if it's not effective, what's the point? We're not training the dog. But you hold that point for a moment. And then eventually, is it fun? So I analyze all these techniques. And so what's my analysis of, the quickest and most effective technique is lure reward training. The easiest is all and none reward training, because you do nothing. You just stand there. You don't give instructions. So it's kind of like shaping on steroids, but you're not shaping the behavior in successive approximations. Either the dog doesn't do it or he does. But when he does it, he does the whole behavior. He's barking or he's not. He's bouncing or he's not. He's running around or he's sitting or lying down. Get it? So it's a wonderful way to teach owners who are totally frustrated and pulling their hair out how to train their dog. Clicker training is great for teaching finesse, for fine-tuning stuff, and for training behaviors that can't be lured or are not in the dog's normal behavior repertoire. So you can wait for it forever, but it won't happen. Okay? But it requires the highest skill set, and it is the slowest training technique to put behaviors on cue. And I'm a great believer, when I define training, it's not just increasing or decreasing the frequency of behaviors, and so eventually they do it all the time or they never do it. To me, it's putting that reliable performance of the behavior on cue, or that reliable cessation of performance on cue. It's all about on cue. So how can we quickly put it on cue? Why? So we can open communication channels, so we can at least give the dog instructions it understands. Instead of back to your chair thing, I used to do this as a demo in vet colleges. I did it at Tufts. And this couple took me out, the 2 students, for lunch. So I said, can I use you for a demo? I said, it's a little stressful, but I really want to show it. He said, yeah. So anyway, in the middle of my talk, I said, oh, could I have my demo student come up on the stage, please? And he comes up on the stage. And every student was there every year at the university, because was it Catherine Haupt, right? I was friends with her like you were, and we were putting on this big behavior lecture. So there was a line of 10 chairs on the stage, and I said to this guy, I said, sit down. And he sat down, and I grabbed him by the tie and said, no, pulled him off the chair like this. I said, sit down. So he sits down again. And this time I grab him by the lapels and I did a judo flip over my back, and he lands on the ground. His eyes go like this. And he gives me he's freaked. I said, it's okay. It's just a demo. I said, no, I like you. Stand up. I'll buy you a beer afterwards, okay? And he said, well, what was all that about? I said, well, I told you to sit down, but you didn't. He says, I did. I said, yeah, but you sat on the wrong chair. I wanted you to sit on this chair. Yeah. He goes, so? I said, well, it's no different from a dog, that you suddenly get mad when he pees on the carpet. How does he know he's peeing in the wrong place? So training is not just teaching the dog what to do, but it's where to do it, when to do it, what to do it with. And that's the thing we get annoyed about. So people, they never forgot that. You've got to teach the puppy where to pee. And so how do we do that? So once you have 2 chairs, it's confusing for humans too. And I can imagine actually Pavlov had a beautiful word for this: mental collision.
Oh, wow.
2 things going on in the brain, that and we don't know what to do. We want to do it, but we dare. Mental collision. Isn't that a beautiful?
That really captures it, I think.
And that's what the poor puppies go through, because there they are peeing, and all of a sudden the owner gets angry and grabs them and rolls them over. I mean, what's he to think? Oh, they want me to tamp my nose in the feces to push it in the carpet pile, or so that's what every border collie does. Now I poop and I turn around and I go tamp 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 tamp. That's obviously what they want to do, because they're overthinking the problem. Yeah, I love demos, and I love human training demos because and you mentioned clicker training. So I did this routine where if you think of um, binary feedbacks we can give to a dog, and in clicker training, of course, it's reward the good, ignore the bad. But before that, we had ignore the good, punish the bad. So I would send someone out of the room at a seminar, and then I tell everyone else in the seminar, write it on the blackboard, this person has to go over to Janet, take her beer, bring it to Ian, and put it on his desk. So that's what we train them to do. So they come through the door, and I always pick a guy for this because this is going to get scary. And he comes through the door. I said, do it. He takes one step, and I go, no!
No, hang on. You warned me that your microphone might mute you for
Yeah,
the next few seconds.
it's all
So,
right. So I'm pausing now before I talk because my mic automatically decreases the volume. But the person freezes. I said, what's wrong? Do it. Do it. He says, I dare. I said, well, it's good you can tell me you dare because dogs can't.
they just
They just
freeze and
freeze.
then they're just being stubborn and
Yeah.
disobedient.
So then I will go through all sorts of training techniques, reward the good, punish the bad. Then I'll have a clicker trainer say, right, click him to do it. Well, what happens is, of course, they click slightly off timing because you have to have perfect time for clicker training. Like they're walking in the right direction towards Jeannie to get the beer, but they look at this person right when they click. So now the person thinks, because they're human and we try and think out what are we being clicked for, they won't leave this person. You can't get them out of there. It takes forever. So I said, all right, I would train it a different way. And so I said, are you ready for my way to train now? And the guy said, take a breath, just recover because it's been stressful, isn't it? I say, Robert, that's his name. Go to Jeannie. Good boy, good boy, good boy. Take beer. Good boy. Bring it to Ian. Good boy, good boy. All things I would train a dog beforehand so that I could, with Phoenix, communicate in a single sentence. And my favorite sentence with Phoenix was, Feeny, come here, take this, go to Jamie, please. She knows, Phoenix, come, take, go to Jamie. Basic training. Please, I just add in there to be nice. So Phoenix would run outside to find Jamie, sit in front of him. We called it Malamute Mail. And it usually said something like, come in now, dinner is ready, or it's mine, signed Phoenix. Because when Jamie came in slowly once, we're talking about eating the food, when the dog blows us off. Well, I called Jamie in for lunch and he didn't come in. So I hid the lunch. And then I put the plate on the floor. And he eventually comes in, where's lunch? So it's on the floor. He says, on the floor? It's gone. I said, oh, I don't know what happened to it. And Phoenix licked the plate, I know that. And he's all going on about his lunch. I said, I called you, you didn't come. I thought you weren't hungry. You didn't appreciate it when your daddy cooks, And then I said, well, I'll see if I got something in the fridge I can prepare for you. So I get his lunch out of the Tupperware, put it on the plate, Mike, and give it to him. So from then on, it was a joke. Come here, or it's Phoenix's, counting down from 10, and he would run in to give it. I was never the sort of parent who's going to do the stuff that, say, some parents, and especially mothers, will do every day in, day out, cooking, cleaning, washing, and having it taken for granted. You take me for granted once, and I just stop working. I'm probably like the Malamute in dog training, No, I need some payback here.